Don't give the governors a thought or a thinking that we are stupid. We know what they do. Look for another example. We have been told recently that in terms of loans given out by our banks, 73% of our loans went back to the national government, which means 23% of those in the loan books of our banks went to the Kenyan populace. But have you asked yourself, if you go to each town, the amount of buildings mushrooming will tell you maybe there is money laundering happening in this country, or there is another source of money which is not the normal sources of money. If today I was to be an investigator in EACC, I don't need, it is not magic. All I need to do is just walk down a street in Eldoret, ask myself how many new buildings have developed. I go to the county where they approve those things, ask myself who owns this house. From there, it is very simple to just audit back and know who is pilfering our economy. The other thing about our governors build systems that you do not understand where they begin and where they end. I come from Uasin Gishu County. If today you go back to Uasin Gishu County, if you were there 10 years ago, you will see tremendous growth in terms of the economy, in terms of even the skyscrapers around there. But in terms of revenue collection, they are not in tandem with the growth of the town. Does it mean that people have money which they cannot pay tax? Those are some of the things we need to ask ourselves. And going forward, under Chapter 11 of our constitutions, we need to have safety nets around there that allow us to audit some of these people. And then again, we need to strengthen the MCAs or abolish them from the word go, because we have people who have power, but they can't do anything. We gave MCAs power to audit these governors, but again, we have put in place bottlenecks that a governor, you can only change 10% of the budget proposed by the governor. That is where corruption is brewed in budgeting.
That's Wakili Kipchumba Karori's point of view. Dismas, I'm going to come to you shortly, but let's listen into what Kenyans have to say with regards to the war on corruption and whether the government is serious on the war on corruption. Now let me cross over to the Central Business District, where my colleague Abubakar Abdullahi is on standby for us. Abubakar, can you hear me? I think we've lost him there, but I'm going to engage Abubakar shortly because he's about to talk to Kenyans there and get their point of view with regards to the government's war on corruption. And I believe we have a soundbite from President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday during his speech at Kakamega's Buhungu Stadium during the 9th Mashujaa Day celebration, where he gave various directives on how to fight corruption. He talked about the need to streamline the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission as well as the DCI to make sure they get more power, more resources in fighting corruption. Let's listen into what the president had to say yesterday.
Administration is taking measures to bring accountability to the public service. These include the fresh vetting of all senior accountants and procurement officers, as well as enhanced lifestyle audits. We have also provided resources to our investigatory agencies that are working to bring cases against the corrupt in order to deter these crimes. To consolidate the gains we are making, the EACC should promulgate regulations and guidelines to enable all investigative agencies to access wealth declaration of all state and public officers. Further, both the Directorate of Criminal Investigation and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission will also be streamlined so that they can complement each other. I have also in the process directed actions that will reduce wastage of public funds and make government departments more accountable and efficient. I am indeed aware that every taxpayer's shilling is hard-earned and that it must be translated to services that make a positive impact in the lives of our people. I want today for everyone in Kenya to know that no matter your standing in society, we are all equal before the law. Cases against corrupt acts are being built against persons who may have thought themselves untouchable. And the ongoing prosecutions will not just be limited to senior public servants who betrayed their oaths of faith of office, but also their accomplices in the private sector, including the professionals who aid in the laundering of stolen public money. My fellow Kenyans, we must accept that corruption is lethal, and as such, we must do all within our power to eliminate it.
President Uhuru Kenyatta there accepting that corruption is lethal. Among the directive he had made yesterday is that he has directed that net be cast wider to nab accomplices of looting public offices. He also talked about promising further streamlining of the EACC and the DCI in delivering one graft, and then he also talked about wealth declaration. Now, Dismas, feel free to talk about the governance. I understand this is a topic we had before, but still, I'm sure Kenyans are asking so many questions with regards to this so-called war on corruption. What happened to the lifestyle audit? What happened to the much publicized polygraph test, for example? I mean, are these just empty promises, or you believe this time around the president is going to accompany these promises with action?
Well, earlier on, Mark indicated that President Kenyatta has got good instincts and good intentions, that he probably knows where the nation is ailing. But those instincts are supposed to be merely a special purpose vehicle for him to drive the anti-corruption agenda. For instance, he speaks about the corruption in the maize sector. And every single Kenyan with average intelligence knows there is corruption within the maize sector. The president knows as much, and in fact the president has got more information than any other Kenyan. So with that kind of information and with infrastructure, how come nobody is behind bars for all this mischief? You know, we may discuss corruption till the cows come home, but till a governor, because now we understand there is a mass devolution of corruption to the counties. If you go to any county headquarters today, the only people who are doing well are governors, MCAs, those county officers, and the county ministers. Those are the only people who are doing well. When you look at the kind of properties that are coming up every single day, they're doing very well. When you look at their bank balances, they're doing very well. But every other person in the neighborhood is struggling. So you begin to ask yourself, is it the case that when you get into this public office, you go to the Kenya School of Government or Administration, then you get special skills that makes you a special entrepreneur, that your profits are only comparable to Safaricom? If there's a good program at Kenya School of Government, why can't all Kenyans go there so that we, all of us, you know, grow, just like these MCAs are doing? So the president's words will count for absolutely nothing till we see the people that he has appointed, his direct appointees, the cabinet secretaries and principal secretaries, his direct appointees. If he does not fire them, for instance, a number of them have appeared before the magistrates' court on corruption. How can it be that Kenya can have an ambassador, a high commissioner, serving in Austria or Russia, who is implicated in economic crimes at home? Can you imagine how would Vladimir Putin be treating our ambassador, who is accused of corruption back at home? How do we stand in the League of Nations, the European Union, in the African Union, when you go for a meeting and everybody sees you, they say, this chap has been accused of corruption back at home? Why can't the president fire anybody who is suspected of corruption? Because, you know, it's very clear that not a single cabinet secretary or a principal secretary will go home in as much as it's been arraigned before a court of law. Because in a civilized economy, and Bichachi says that Kenya is not in that category, which I disagree, but you would have expected Dr. Richard Ekai and Dr. Wario to resign immediately when they appeared before magistrate or court. But what are they still doing in office? Now, the president, using his intelligence, DCI, EACC, knows that the people he serves with, the people he has appointed, have been accused of corruption. He knows when he appointed them, they would not afford steak or a sizzling, sizzling steak and whiskey at Trattoria. But now, they can buy the entire of Trattoria, they can buy the entire of Nairobi town. They've got assets which are not consistent with their business acumen. Is that not sufficient for the president to have eyebrows? Because at some stage, people are going to, and if the president is not careful, anytime he delivers a speech, people are going to roll their eyes. In fact, there's a very high risk that his speech during Jamhuri Day, people may not even pay attention. Because on Mashujaa Day, he says, if you are corrupt, you're going to face the music. On, or rather, Madaraka Day, he said as much. Then yesterday, he said as much. And he may end up repeating the same on Jamhuri Day. So there's a very high risk that if from now till 12th of December, if there's no action, because Kenyans want to see blood.
Yes.
They want to see some of these governors who come up with unexplained mansions facing the music. Why can't he order Jubilee is a political party? As we mull over having a review of our constitution, just to change one act in the National Assembly, to say that if you're a public servant, you got appointed in 2013, then 2 years later, you are a US dollar millionaire, you are actually guilty. You need to prove to us that you've not stolen this money. So that if you have gone to Kisii and planted maize and you've sold it for a profit, let's see the receipts. If you've been selling those carvings from a place called near my home called Iterio to the UK market or the US market, give us evidence. That's how Singapore was able to kill corruption. That's how Israel was able to kill corruption. But right now, people are going to become tired. And there's a very high risk that the next time the president says he's fighting corruption, there'll be a collective yawn from all Kenyans, and they'll say, we've had this before.
Yes, and I can see Mark there keenly listening and looking at you. Mark, I'm sure you want to react to what Dismas has been talking about, but at the same time, I'd like you to talk us through about, the seriousness of the government with regards to the war on corruption. Because, for example, if you look at the appointments that have been made in the recent past, these are people who've been implicated in various scandals, but still they get appointed into, various public offices. So what does this say about the president, the appointing authorities? Is he ill-advised, misadvised by individuals who are around him?
There are a number of things, but first I have to address the issue of whether we are a civilized country. Now, you cannot say we are civilized, then say that Wario was arrested and not resign from his position. This is the funny thing with this country.
No one ever seems to resign. I mean,
we have a sitting governor who is sitting in prison and he's still governor. I do not understand this country. We need to have the kind of values that say that if I am incapable of performing my duties because of great personal challenges in a court of law, then let me step out of it. That's where we need to be. And that is a civilized country. That's entry-level civility. That's right next to being able to use toilets and bathrooms correctly, which, again, we fail to do as Kenyans quite a bit. So let's be very clear. The President of the Republic of Kenya is the appointing authority for ambassadors, for many commissions, many parastatal heads and directors. What I find funny in this fight against corruption, and before I say what I find funny, let me first congratulate the president for being the first president to have arrested so many people and had so many cases in court, and that is good and in order, and it should continue. But at the same time, what I find funny is Uhuru has forgotten that whereas he has the right to hire, he also has the right to fire.
Yes.
And it is not a court procedure to fire anybody. In fact, the Constitution has given him such latitude, he can fire Kiunjuri for simply not liking his face. Okay? That is how much privilege he has. And one of the things that the president should be able to do is he should be able to say that in his cabinet, and that brings me to the people he appoints, in his cabinet, it seems to me that he does not have a single CS who is on his side to fight corruption. And I'll give you proof. There's not a single CS who's come and said, Mr. President or DCI, Nuruddin Haji, I have found these funny payments in my ministry. Could you please investigate? 100% of those cases, it is the DCI, the DPP coming from outside, while the CS is apparently trying to cover up. In fact, the CS of Energy is on record saying that he would like to shed tears and trade places with Kenya Power management who were arrested on grounds of corruption. So we clearly have at least one CS who has more sympathy for the people who claimed to have stolen electricity from hospitals where ICU patients are dying. He had more sympathy for the thieves than he had for the people who had lost lives. Now, you tell me, with a CS like that in Energy, how is Uhuru's team fighting corruption? That is why Uhuru Uhuru's appointments seem dyslexic. He seems confused because the people who are recommending people to him are simply partial to thieves, they are partial to the corrupt, and they seem to be in bed quite comfortably with the people whose teeth still have the flesh of Kenyans in them. So you cannot tell me that the president is going to win the fight against corruption if he cannot pick up his pen and fire people even before there is a judicial process.
We hope the relevant authorities are listening. Quite a mouthful. Many thanks, Mark, for that. And I'm sure Wakili James and Kipchumba would like to bite into it. But we'll take a very short break. But when we come back, we'll still continue with these matters, graft in this country and the seriousness or lack of it of the government with regards to the fight on graft. Abubakar Abdullah is still at the CBD, and we're going to get some views from Kenyans with regards to this topic of discussion. But at the same time, still to come,